Thursday, October 27th, 1927. A crowd of people begins to gather outside the Hotel Lincoln in Brighton, Michigan. This small town would regularly see its share of big names stopping through, as it sits almost halfway between the state capital of Lansing, Michigan, and the bustling city of Detroit. Today, though, the crowd wasn't peering in the windows of the building trying to catch a glimpse of a famous face inside. They were interested in the celebrity outside the building. She looked familiar, but appeared to be more refined than they remembered. Her color appeared brighter, and her proportions were more attractive than they last saw. But what was she doing there, parked on Grand River Road in this small town 40 miles northwest of Dearborn, Michigan? A local man worked his way through the throng of onlookers, held up a camera, and snapped what would be the first photographs of the Model A Ford. When Ford announced in May of 1927 that the Model T was going to be replaced, they followed it up with nearly 6 months of complete silence about the unnamed successor. They originally expected the Model A to be ready much sooner, but development and production delays stretched the timeline until December of 1927. The lack of communication was as much a part of Henry's desire to control the narrative of his company as it was a basic lack of news to share with the public. Despite no official word from Ford, there were still plenty of media outlets reporting details about the new Ford, albeit mainly based on hearsay or outright speculative journalism. Many newspapers and trade magazines published articles guessing what was to come. Little details that proved to be true were leaked out. The car was to have a traditional gearshift transmission. It would be equipped with four-wheel brakes. But Ford Motor Company officials were always quick to squash these reports as nothing more than rumors. As autumn set in, reports began leaking out that Ford was starting to produce prototypes of the new car. Opportunistic cameramen set up camp outside of Ford's various properties in Dearborn, Michigan, hoping to catch a glimpse of this fabled new car as it was sent out on trial runs. But they always came up empty. Newsmen of the day would sensationalize this fact and claim it was due to the new Ford being so fast that professional photographers couldn't even get a photo of it. Which brings us back to Brighton, Michigan in late October 1927, when two Ford executives stopped for lunch at the Hotel Lincoln. This itself wasn't unusual. Situated exactly halfway between Detroit and the state capital of Lansing, Brighton was regularly visited by the elite of the automotive industry as they traveled for business. Henry Ford's younger brother Bill lived in Brighton, meaning even Henry was known to be a somewhat frequent visitor of the town. What was unusual on this October day was the fact that these Ford men were driving the new Ford, a Tudor to be exact, with a pea green painted body. The executives parked it on what was then Mill Street and went inside for lunch. Word quickly spread among the small town that Henry's new car was there, eventually reaching the office of F.W. O'Brien, editor of the small town's weekly newspaper, the Brighton Argus. Thinking a prank was being pulled, he walked over to the hotel, and after seeing with his own eyes that it was indeed a Ford like he had never seen before, he ran back to his office to grab his camera. He snapped several photographs of the car as it was parked on the street. These photographs were taken on a Thursday. The Brighton Argus printed on Wednesdays. Knowing what he had, O'Brien developed the film himself and took the photos to an engraver in Detroit to have plates made for the next week's paper. So it was that on November 2nd, the citizens of Brighton saw the first published images of the new Ford in their newspaper. News of the existence of these photographs spread like wildfire, and by the middle of November, dozens of newspapers across the country told the story of the small-town editor who had the first images of Henry's lady. Some of these reports claim that Henry Ford himself was driving the car, but since that fact isn't stated in the original Argus article, it is most likely incorrect. Something was different with the publication of these photos. For the first time, Ford executives didn't immediately shoot down the credibility of the photos. Eventually, on November 17th, they did issue a blanket statement denying the accuracy of any previously published photographs. But we know from hindsight that the images captured by F.W. O'Brien that day were of the new Ford. And, just to be clear, there are older photographs of Model A's, like this one of the first production car that was taken a week before the Brighton ones. But These are internal photographs taken by Ford. The Argus photos were the first known photos to be taken of a Model A in the wild. The car itself had to be an extremely early example. Only 108 engine blocks had been stamped by October 27th, and only about 20 of them had been sent to the assembly line to be placed in a chassis. Meaning, this car most likely would have carried a 2-digit serial number. O'Brien's images show what is clearly a Model A two-door. The bullet headlights, the belt molding, the drum tail light, all these factors make it instantly recognizable as a Model A. The car was equipped front and rear with the open-end bumpers, which were only placed on the first 200 vehicles produced. In the following weeks, O'Brien's photos were widely reproduced as more and more publications recognized the validity of the photos and wanted to show the new Ford. Some of the printing blocks of his photos survive today. By December 1st, Ford had released their official photographs and illustrations showing the new body styles, which meant better quality images were available for publication, both as news articles and paid advertisements. No longer the only source, the Brighton Argus photographs were soon forgotten about in the ensuing decades of the Model A, and the story behind this small-town scoop has faded into obscurity. But for several weeks in November of 1927, one small-town newspaper editor was national news, having taken the first public photos of a Model A. Do you think there's earlier photos of the Model A out there? Let us know in the comments. And as always, we hope you continue to enjoy a Model A.